start. Hi there, my name is Andrew Sweeney. Welcome to my podcast. This is the third in a series of articles I've written about Jordan Peterson and his various conversation partners. And this is about Iain McGilchrist, who is one of my favorite writers, and he's written one of the books that I've loved the most in the last 5 years. So I'm really happy that they had a discussion together, and apparently they're going to have a much longer one soon. Two of the best books I've read in the past 5 years are The Master and His Emissary by Iain McGilchrist and Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. I was therefore thrilled that a dialogue, however short and sweet, has taken place between them. These are men who, to use the pop culture term, have red-pilled a lot of people, or taken us down a deep rabbit hole of illumination, inversion, great beauty, and sometimes sheer terror. Both men have done something monumental in my view. That is to say, they are peacemakers. By this I mean they have bridged the disparate, warring worlds. For instance, phenomenology and science, religion and empiricism, poetry and objectivity. In other words, they have, metaphorically speaking, combined the right brain view of the world with the left brain view in Iain McGilchrist's formulation. They have showed us how a real renaissance or unification of culture can come into being by restoring the proper relationship between the it, or the objective world of tools and concepts, and the thou, or the living world of subjective mystery. Both McGilchrist and Peterson combine multiple disciplines. They make the bridge from the hard sciences to the arts, psychology, and religion. Although their descriptions of the brain hemispheres can't be elaborated on here without some left brain reductionism, nevertheless we can generalize about the left-right chaos-order man-woman dichotomy, metaphorically mirrored in the divided asymmetrical brain. As they say in Zen, a finger pointing to the moon is not the moon itself. Perhaps, to extend the analogy, McGilchrist and Peterson point from different locations but are aiming at the same moon. To put it broadly, Peterson's mission is to bring habitable order and coherent meaning to the world. In other words, clean up your room, bucko. McGilchrist, on the other hand, criticizes the modern mania for too much control and arbitrary order. While he acknowledges the necessity of reason and the scientific method, he pushes us towards the living mystery of the right hemisphere. Peterson asks us to make form out of chaos, which seems, at least on the surface, to be the function of the left brain, seemingly the opposite approach to McGilchrist. But is there necessarily a contradiction between these two views, or can we hold them simultaneously? McGilchrist tells us that civilizations reach their zenith when both hemispheres, metaphorically speaking, exist in proper relationship. That means the right brain view, based on depth, the body, and intuition, is sovereign. The right brain master should rule over the more instrumental, mapping, and technocratic left brain servant. Peterson, on the other hand, talks about how mythological and traditional boundaries provide the proper framework for us to orient ourselves in a world of suffering and malevolence, how logos, or articulated truth speech, creates order from chaos and frees us from ideological possession. McGilchrist argues for fluidity and metaphor, perhaps the feminine in Jungian terms, whereas Peterson calls for order and boundaries, a more masculine approach. However, it is not true that McGilchrist is against reason, only that he distinguishes it from mere rationality. The left brain rations or reduces things to bits. Reason, as opposed to rationality, brings us more holistic perspectives, which includes the metaphysical and the religious. Mere rationality cuts us off from the right hemisphere and leads to extreme scientific reductionism and cultural fragmentation. But reason, balanced with intuition, connects us to the whole complex being. Peterson is not as conservative and order-obsessed or left hemisphere-oriented as all that, however, and writes about the hero's need to fight dragons in the chaotic underworld. Still, we can see why he has attracted people who are looking for meaning and orientation in their lives. Peterson speaks of a need for a balance between order and chaos, conservatism and liberalism, the masculine and the feminine. Perhaps the difference between the two is that McGilchrist privileges the right brain as the master. I wonder if Peterson would agree with his thesis. These differences might explain some of the friendly tensions in their preliminary discussions. Peterson suggested that it was unusual for McGilchrist to privilege the right hemisphere. Traditionally, the left brain rules the right hand functions of tool-making, language, and generally making manageable order of chaos. McGilchrist, to counter this, suggested that Peterson has leaned too much towards order and might not acknowledge the necessary chaos and the richness of the right hemisphere. This may be a legitimate critique of some of Peterson's low-resolution ideas, which can, at times, be overly reductive in the service of polemical statements. This tension may also have something to do with the differences in personalities of the two men. McGilchrist appears almost camera-shy. He has a tendency towards melancholy. I would say he is very connected to the bitter sweetness of the heart, to put it poetically. He is an introvert and doesn't appear to cherish the public eye, whereas Peterson is an obvious extrovert, is combative, and seems to have taken to the public stage with a certain relish. Perhaps we could say that Peterson has an excess of charisma and McGilchrist an excess of sadness. This is not a critique. We need more excess in this conformist society. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom, as William Blake has said. Peterson has used left brain anger to cut through the superficialities of the culture, but with deep right brain depth and feeling for the issues at hand. McGilchrist, on the other hand, has combined his right brain-oriented depth, for music and painting for instance, with the empirical left brain sphere of brain science and philosophy. It should be added that both men have considerable clinical experience and offer very practical, rather than merely intellectual observations. They are heroes of a sort. They have moved from the sphere of left brain abstraction to unity and integration, where the master is no longer a slave to his tools, but uses them wisely. Their task has been to bring the shadow puppet to life, to move from the dead matter of mere conceptuality to the living world of the spirit. Both Peterson and McGilchrist are great integrative thinkers, which we need at this moment to heal the wounds of extreme fragmentation and polarization.